Doctors like you have demanding schedules. Growing your portfolio shouldn't be another burden. And the last thing you want when you take off the scrubs is a call from a tenant about an overflowing toilet. Equitable brings you streamlined access to vetted real estate investments that work for you, even when you're off the clock. Only 5% make the cut, and once you invest, a team of professionals goes to work to maximize your returns. With a minimum investment of just $5,000, diversify outside the stock market with cash-flowing real estate like multifamily, industrial self-storage, and more. Welcome to modern real estate investing. Visit equitimultiple.com to learn more. That's equitimultiple.com.
We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show.
Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got Justin Simpson for you for the podcast today, coming out of San Francisco. He's an AI enthusiast and advisor. He's also co-founder of HereNow AI, which we'll hear all about. A lot of the conversation is going to talk about the practical use cases, how everyday people can use AI to simplify their lives, their businesses, and really happy to have him on. So, Justin, welcome.
Thank you, Christopher. It's nice to be with you and you to have me on.
Yeah. Briefly talk about your journey and your background and how you got started.
Sure. So I spent a lot of my life in banking and specifically dealing with quantitative finance. And so what we didn't call AI in those days, but machine learning and neural networks and the sort of underpinnings of what is today AI. So when AI exploded onto the scene with the arrival of ChatGPT, I realized that I had spent a lot of my career explaining complex things in ways that were usable to investors or to clients of the firm that I was at. And so it was a natural for me to try and take that role forward in AI because I have this grave concern, particularly sitting here in San Francisco where the wealth creation out of AI already is tremendous, but it's accruing to a small group of people. And I want to see more people using and benefiting from AI in their daily lives. So I founded HereNow AI, which is a publishing venture. You may be interested to know that in addition to the core newsletter, we're just trialing a Health Now AI, which is the impact of AI in the medical sphere, which is tremendous, and just trying to get people to experiment with it, to think about how they might use it, not be intimidated by it or not think about it as a techie's problem or something in the future, but something that they can use, and hence the name Here and Now.
Yeah, I really like that. And talk about this area and where you see if the average everyday user, how can they start to use this technology to make their lives better, easier? Just a brief overview.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And we break life in the newsletter and the publishing into at work, at home, and at play, because I think those are three great areas where you can really experiment in each of them. And at work, obviously, we all have too many things going on. So if AI is not going to make our life more efficient, help us to drive more business, help us to reduce costs or increase efficiencies in the business, then it's a bit pointless. So very much focused on what's going to help me advance my business goals. And there are a variety of things we can chat about that are in that sphere and extremely helpful today, usable today. And then in the at-home sphere, all of us have calendar scheduling things. All of us have complexities around how we organize our lives. There's some quite fun and useful ways to help use AI, and that's only going to become more and more pronounced as agents come into our lives. And you can actually tell an agent, please go and find the cheapest flight for me to get to Hong Kong and book it for me, and here's my credit card details. That's not here yet, but it's coming soon. But there are other things that you can do. And then at play, we all have creative sides. I don't know about you. You're probably a very creative guy. I am creatively challenged. I struggle with a stick figure. And yet I can go into an AI image creation system and I can describe whatever is in my head that I could never hope to put down by my own creative talents on paper. But I can get a very credible picture or even a short movie out of AI and then really explore a fun sort of side of using this technology for enrichment rather than for direct profit, let's say, like in the business side.
Yeah, because I had most recently, a lot of the guests, AI has become a significant part of the conversation, which shows to you how ubiquitous it's starting to be so pervasive in our everyday lives. And one of the one of the concerns about AI was that it's going to create more inequality, and basically the wealthy or the people with access to resources are going to be able to use AI to create more wealth for themselves. And but you're want to bridge the AI divide for non-technical users. How do you plan to accomplish this? Just it's basically, it sounds like AI literacy or tech literacy is if you don't know how to use like a smartphone or social media, you're at a disadvantage, or if you don't have an internet connection. So how do you do? What is here now AI? How does that do?
You phrased the problem exactly correctly, Christopher, which is this AI divide, the wealth creation that I see day to day. And I go down to these events where I can meet people that are building multi-$100 million companies right now. And the technology is available to, or is used by, a tiny little sliver of people. When I talk, I advise, in addition to the publishing, I advise small and medium-sized businesses on how should I think about AI, what should I do with AI and whatnot. And the way I describe it to them is, if you're running a small business or you're a solopreneur or a small practice, AI is the most democratizing force, the most powerful force that's been put in the hands of small business since small business came around, which was thousands of years ago. Because all of a sudden, if you're a 1 or 2 or 3-man shop, you have a publicity department, a marketing department, a customer service department. You can communicate with your audience in ways that you could never do without the power or the leverage of some of these tools. You can create efficiencies that you could never do. You can stop doing that same stuff that drives you nuts as a small business owner that I know can drive you nuts, by using tools that make the stuff more efficient. And that's available right now. I advise a client who runs a security firm here in San Francisco, and it's effectively a 2-man show. He runs the security guards and places them at the different locations where they're required. And his wife runs the business and the book, so not atypical of a small business. He now puts out the most professional newsletter on issues in security that makes him look like he is a multi-million-dollar big professional firm that's helping him gain clients, and all done with relatively little effort because of the power of AI. And that's multiple. We're here in San Francisco, about, roughly speaking, a third speak English as a first language, a third speak Spanish as a third language, first language, and a third speak one of the major Asian languages, a third. You can market to each of those customers in their own language. That's no longer an obstacle. And why wouldn't you want to? If you're running a small business and you want to reach out beyond your narrow community, why wouldn't you want to reach out to people in their own language? And again, the difficulty of doing this, very low. The barrier to entry, virtually not there. And yet still we find businesses are intimidated, or these entrepreneurs are intimidated, because it feels like a big and complicated thing. And so my mission is to try and say it's not actually that big and that complicated. Be very big and complicated if you were the guy who had to introduce AI to IBM. I wouldn't want that job. But talking about small and medium-sized businesses, it's very doable.
Yeah, it's interesting because you said it so perfectly, because it's like people are using AI to generate wealth, and you're talking about these really valuable companies being generated just overnight, just with the AI coding. And what was so fascinating was there was this interview with Mark Andreessen and with Tom Bilyeu, and he was talking about, he was basically saying AI is not going to widen the gap. It's because it's one of the most like democratizing forces. It's like you have basically the power of 10,000 people in a smartphone. It's just like you just have to pick it up and learn how to use it. With that being said, what are some tools that everybody, every day, somebody listening to this podcast, they can go right now, pick up and use in their everyday life?
So the first one is ChatGPT. It was there first. It's been improved a number of times. You and I could get into a sort of struggle about, at the moment, is Claude from Anthropic slightly better than Gemini from Google, etc. But that doesn't really matter. Just use ChatGPT as an example. It's there, and you can get their latest and fastest models for nothing. So you really should have that on your computer or on your phone. The second part, though, is how you use it. And this is where a lot of people go wrong, because they ask it a question, the same question that they'd ask of Google search, and it gives a very poor answer, because that's not what it's designed to do, right? It's not a search engine for the internet, although it can search the internet and find now the latest in the last few days. It can go and find stuff for you, but that's not really why you should be using it. You should be saying, help me write a high school essay about the history of Japanese immigration to San Francisco, or help me write a blog piece for my internet that strikes the tone of a positive and enthusiastic person living in San Francisco, looking forward to the next few years of AI and what it's going to mean, etc. Not that you're giving it all of the work to do, because I think one of the things that we see on the internet is more and more stuff that's written by AI sounds a bit like it's written by AI, but it can certainly help you get started down your creative process or make it more efficient. And if you're advertising, if you're like me, as I say, not very creative, what should I put on Instagram or on LinkedIn to sound credible in a space? It's a great way to start. But you have to ask it intelligently, not just write me a LinkedIn post on X. Here's a subject. I want you to act as a subject matter expert on such and such. I want you to write a 200-word piece. I want it to be confident and businesslike and professional in its tone. And then it comes out and you say, that's not good enough. Try again and be more, introduce some humor or whatever it is that you want. So if we can think about it more like using a WhatsApp and a conversation as opposed to a Google search, then that idea of the back and forth and improving what you get out of it until it's usable. And even then, reading it and maybe adding some of your own words to make sure that it's your own voice that's speaking. So that's a great place to start. You can also ask that, write me a strategy for how I'm going to tackle this week that's coming ahead because I've got meetings and preparations and whatever. You can ask it, write me a health plan. I'm trying to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds and I'd like to your suggestions as to how I go about it. There's many different things that it can do in addition to just that outsourcing your marketing material. But playing with it is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's quite, because ChatGPT now they have you can actually search, you can actually put in prompt and it'll search the web. It's not very good. I've played around with it, but like I said, it's like different use cases. Like you go to Google search and it just like spits out a bunch of websites. But now with Gemini, try to integrate. In the early days, it was like ChatGPT, you could put it in and it would just like integrate and just give you a more cohesive answer. So everything is evolving.
And I think if I could interrupt just to say, but I think that's so important, that if you have a bad experience, there's only 2 reasons. The one is that you didn't ask it the questions that were going to get the best answer out of it. So think about, should I have asked it differently? Could I ask better? But the second is, if it's not that good, you just mentioned ChatGPT only released its web interface 2 days ago or 3 days ago. So yeah, it's not that good, but play with it anyway, because in a week or a month, it will be that good. It's coming soon. You can be sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how fast, because like early days of ChatGPT, like in early 2023, it was very clunky and it were like answers were just weird. But now it's almost like talking to a human, and it's just getting better and better. And they now can generate images. And I think next year it could probably generate videos. Just one thing that is really interesting is this, because you're in San Francisco, that's just the tech entrepreneur startup capital of the world. What are you seeing in terms of the role of AI in health and wellness? In what ways is AI being used? I'm just really curious, because it sounds like healthcare is like this ossified, very archaic, very bureaucratic model. But then I see AI as like this hammer just ready to like just basically destroy, make healthcare more innovative. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It is a hammer coming towards a system that probably needs a hammer. And by the way, Christopher, I'm happy to make this special edition Health Now AI available to any of your listeners that would like it. So please, I'll pass it on and feel free to share it. But what we looked at was really AI in 3 different buckets. But the one bucket is how much of a doctor's life in a practice or a dentist's life in a practice is spent in admin, writing up notes, making sure that the visit is recorded correctly. And there are very specific applications now. ChatGPT is not very good at that. There was an article in the newspaper last week saying doctors are finding mistakes in ChatGPT. That's because you shouldn't be using ChatGPT to take detailed notes in a complicated medical consultation.
Yeah.
But there are specialist versions, if you like, or large language models that are trained on medical language, that are expecting you to use medical technology, that are expecting you to, and know what, roughly speaking, the structure of notes should be. You describe the patient, you describe the patient's malady, you describe your thoughts about it, you give a firm conclusion, you talk about treatment options, etc. And so as you have this natural conversation with your patient, the AI is listening and transcribing it and identifying things that it either didn't understand or wants you to look at in more detail. So thinking about one of the main reasons that doctors are leaving the medical profession is because of burnout from this bureaucracy. This is going directly to the heart of that, and I think that's very good. The second is, how is AI being used in a clinical setting? So if you go for an MRI scan or you go to radiology, etc., those processes are now in the first stages of AI diagnosis. And now you're taking a radiologist or the doctor who's interpreting an MRI scan, and you're giving a high probability, not certainty because it's a machine, but it's a high probability diagnosis of looking at these different things that should be focused on and helping make that opinion, hopefully with a higher degree of certainty and certainly quicker, more efficiency.
Yeah.
And then the third, obviously, is in the field of research. And there's just a transformation in the speed with which you can bring drugs to market, because you can do so much of the modeling before you get to the human test stage and speed up that whole discovery process. In the field that's sort of allied to healthcare, there's another sort of side fields, which we mentioned in the newsletter, which I think is fascinating. There are now apps which you can use by taking a selfie on your phone. It can assess all sorts of conditions of our temperature and blood pressure and what have you with a high degree of accuracy. So not for specific and highly detailed cases, but for your general health assessment. This app will tell you, oh, you look great, everything's good, or wow, I'm seeing a little bit of a spike in this from last week. You should perhaps talk to your doctor about something. So giving people the power, democratizing some of that healthcare decision-making into their own hands, where they can keep an eye on themselves in a way that they can't keep going back to the GP to get the bloods taken or blood pressure tested, etc.
Interesting. Yeah, because when I was in med school, early 2000s, radiology, that was like one of the very highly coveted specialties. It was like really competitive. And now if I look at it, it's still competitive, but people don't want to go into it because they're afraid the AI is going to take their job. Do you see a role where doctors are losing their jobs because of AI? It's hard to imagine, but I've seen it. I've seen it happen in the law profession, and just you think doctors are not immune from in the AI?
So I would say if a doctor has a part of their life that is repetitive and bureaucratic and not value added, but necessary somehow to be doing their job as a doctor, that piece could be automated away. But the idea is not that makes the doctor irrelevant. That gives the doctor more capacity to do the things that they're good at and that they were trained for, not more admin. Similarly, with your radiologist example, if a radiologist sits there and puts his head in the sand or her head in the sand and says, I don't care about this stuff, I'm not interested, AI is not my jam, then they are at risk.
Yeah.
But if a radiologist says, wow, this is fantastic, I can now do 3x the amount of diagnosis or 2x the amount of diagnosis I could because AI is helping me by pre-preparing and pointing out things, that radiologist is going to get better and probably be more successful.
Yeah.
So again, this idea that AI is coming for people's jobs is a fantastic professor down at Stanford called Fei-Fei Li, and she says AI will not take your job, but somebody who knows how to use AI might take your job. So that's what we're encouraging you and I now having this conversation to say to people, figure out a place where you can incorporate it into your life. Where is it going to be useful? Where is it going to give you impact at work or at home? And play with it and get some sense of its potential so that you aren't the one who's sitting in with your head in the sand saying, oh my gosh, I don't want to deal with this stuff. It's too scary.
Yeah. It's very interesting because I know I think in my lifetime, I don't think I'm going to see AI robots performing like heart surgery or like joint replacements. I think if you're doing like a technical that requires human judgment, and that's okay for now, at least in my lifetime. And it's really very interesting because I've just seen this gradual shift in doctors' responsibilities. It used to be like the doctor saw the patient one-on-one, but when they didn't have, now they were so constrained, they started using like mid-levels, like nurse practitioners, PAs, residents to see. And then now it looks like now the AI is coming. So doctors should learn how to use AI to streamline their workflows. The other question is with this, how do you see AI getting rid of the middlemen in healthcare, like particularly the insurance companies?
That's the I think a lot of people would be very happy if AI could achieve that. Anybody who's dealt with that. Yeah, I think that it's, as you described it, the medical administration infrastructure, including insurance and the middlemen and et cetera, is a very complicated animal. And it's not easy to say there's a single solution. But if you think about somebody who has an illness and the doctor wants to do a treatment and the treatment needs to be pre-cleared, et cetera, it is fairly standard in terms of you can define a process on a piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
About where that query goes and where the decisions are made and how it comes back and how much is paid. Of course, the finance part of it is a mystery to anybody who doesn't live in that world, where they tell you that the procedure costs 100,000, but we've negotiated to 50,000 and insurance is covering 20,000, and somehow you write a check for $50 and it's all okay. It is a complete mystery. AI could definitely help untangle that if the will was there. But what I see happening, just like we're talking about with regular medicine, is that pieces will be grabbed and made efficient in and of themselves. And then ultimately the system will be connected in a more thoughtful way. There are a number of folk who are committed to what I call societal AI or beneficial AI for good, that really want to take these tools and apply them to societal level problems. And I would think that would be one that would get a lot of, whether it's foundational money or academic research grants, that sort of stuff to look into, because, if that can be made 10% better, the impacts for the American economy would be extraordinary.
Yeah. How can people find out more about you and reach out to you, follow you? You're very versed and experienced in this and at the epicenter of it. And how can they check out your work?
Yeah. Thank you, Christopher. My website is, as it sounds, www.HereNowAI.com, and that's easy. That's the newsletter. And then there's a little piece on there about the team. There's emails, there's LinkedIn profiles. I'm very open I love chatting about this stuff, and I'm very happy to chat to anybody who'd like to follow up in any way. As I say, I'll also send you a copy of HealthNow AI, which is not being distributed on a regular basis, but is a one-time newsletter that we put together for people who have a particular interest in what its impact on the health sphere is going to be.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and keep up the great work, and thanks for connecting. And for all the audience, be sure to check out Justin's resources, his socials, and thanks so much.
A great pleasure to meet you, and thank you for having me, Christopher. All the best.
Ready to diversify outside the stock market? Equity Multiple brings you streamlined real estate investing. Access vetted, cash-flowing opportunities from anywhere. Start today with just $5,000 at equitymultiple.com.
I'm excited that you made it for another episode. You are truly the best. If you've been following the show for a while, you know that my passion is to bring you the education you need to find your path to financial freedom. Please come back week after week for new content, new resources, and great guests. Until then, if you haven't already, please be sure to check out the website, www.drchrislewmdphd.com for more support. I'll see you next week.